Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz, and today we're going to be doing a garage review of this thing, the KV-1, which is a heavy tank that not many people talk about. I can think of some reasons why, but when people, talk about their lists of tanks that they like / don't like, and tanks that they enjoy playing, etc., etc., KV-1 is never on there. People tend to not like playing the Churchill, but then people at least talk about the Churchill. People talk about the KV-220T, the T1 Heavy, the BDR, things like that. People talk about because they've got either good armor or a good gun. KV-1 is just sort of left out. And today we're going to be having a look at why. So 680 HP, which is not that great. KV-220's got 800. T14's got 750. The Churchills have got 700 generally. Oh no, 840 for the Churchill 3. Churchill 1, 700. So yeah, it doesn't have particularly great. HP. As for armor though, armor is alright. 110 all round on the turret, 75 frontal hull, 57 side and rear, which is not too bad. The hull armor is bit lacking in comparison to Churchill. Churchill 3 has got better turret armor than a KV-1 does have frontal hull armor. The turret armor though is very strong. The cheeks are of course the weak spot around the gun. That's just a known fact about things like T-34s and KV-1s, where the cheeks are the weak spot. But the turret, however, generally is very strong frontally, especially for a Tier 5 heavy. It's a very good hull down tank. So if you can only show your turret, then you'll do very well. The hull itself, yeah, this bit is very easy to pen, as is the lower glacis. This upper sloped glacis is alright. You can kind of side scrape as well. It's got fairly decent flat side armour. Not quite as good as something like a Churchill. Actually, no, a Churchill's not particularly great at side scraping. Not as good as a KV-220T for side scraping, or a T14, 50 side, and it's also sloped a little bit. It's maybe not the best heavy at side scraping at the tier, but it's one of the better ones. So overall, the armour can work. If you can't hide your hull, people will easily just be able to pen your hull. Even at an angle like this, people can still go through your lower glacis, which is, yeah. Mobility though, yeah, 22 average speed, kilometers an hour, 10.7 power to weight ratio, 20 degrees turret, 30 degrees hull, 535 horsepower engine. It's not good. It's not good in mobility. In comparison to Churchill 1, has got better average speed, slightly worse power to weight, a better turret and a worse hull. I've forgotten what the KV-1 has. KV-1's got 30 degrees, yeah. So a Churchill is sort of on par. It's probably worse in terms of mobility, in terms of power to weight, although power to weight is still only, what, like 0.5, 0.4 power to weight worse, but it's got slightly better average speed. As for hull and turret though, yeah, the KV-1 has got it beat on that. The Churchill 3 as well, again, even worse power to weight, the same sort of hull and turret. Traverse, T14 as well. T14 has actually got pretty decent mobility, 30, 15.1. Again, no one quite comes up to the KV-1's hull traverse. KV-220 as well, 23 on both. Better power to weight, better average speed. Even tanks that I don't have in my garage. Let's go here, because I was looking at some of these. There we go, we've got the T1 Heavy, mobility, 32 degrees per second turret, 20 degrees per second hull, better power to weight, better average speed. With the top engine it goes even better, 16.3 and 28 average speed. So T1's got it covered in that. BDR stock, this is 10.4 power to weight, 21 average speed, kilometers an hour. With the upgraded engine goes to 13.3 and a better traverse. Honestly, the only thing that the KV-1 doesn't lose to is the Churchill, and that's not particularly impressive. Most things can beat a Churchill in mobility. it's just not particularly mobile. Hull traverse, I'll give you that, pretty decent. 30 degrees per second. Hull traverse, Easy 4 has got 38 degrees, so 8 degrees worse than a medium, which is not too bad. In comparison to something like a Matilda 4, which is a medium, gets a 38 and a 36. With better power to weight and better average speed, a Matilda 4 is a better mobility than a KV-1. And it's a Matilda. Yes, it is a medium, but it's a medium heavy, you know. You know how it is. It's a Matilda. Yeah, mobility on this thing is not great. But what's even worse in quotations, is the gun. You've got the stock 76, you've got the 122 derp gun, and you've got the 85mm. And most people run it with the 85. Other people run it with the 122, which is understandable. It's a derp gun, it's a howitzer, it's a mini KV-2. Sort of. It also leads the KV-2. But this is the gun that most people will be going with. An 85mm, which has got terrible dispersion and aim time, 5.7 second aim time, 0.38 dispersion, 1200 DPM with a 9.81 second reload time, 120 average pen with AP, 161 with the APCR and 43 with HE, 200 average damage with AP, 170 with APCR and 300 with HE, and 7 degrees of gun depression. It has got the least amount of DPM of a heavy at tier 5. If you use the 122, you're technically getting better DPM. As to whether or not you can do full damage or even pen with your HE and your heat is entirely subjective. But technically, if each shot, I assume, pens and does average damage, it'll do 1400 DPM. 1200 DPM on this thing is bad. Honestly, it is terrible. Churchill 1, it gets better average pen, better DPM, better reload time, better dispersion and aim time. Only 4 degrees of gun depression. That's the weak spot of the Churchill in terms of the gun. Overall, the high velocity Vickers is a very good gun though for a heavy tank. So let's discount the Churchill then. The Churchill 3, because at some point this thing got given a choice between a 76 or a 6-pounder. And looking at it here with the 76 gets better dispersion, better aim time, better DPM, better reload time, slightly worse average pen, but 8 degrees of gun depression as well. So the Churchill 3 has got a better gun in terms of DPM. T14, better reload time. Let's have a look. Better reload time, better DPM by a lot. Yeah, worse dispersion, I'll give you that, and a worse aim. No, better aim time. Worse average pen. That's sort of standard on tier 5 premium American 75mm armed vehicles, but still 10 degrees of gun depression. KV-220T, that gets 1400 DPM, better reload time, better accuracy, better aim time, gets 10mm less average pen. But let's then have a look. Okay, all of those things are either the Churchill 1, which gets the best gun for a tier 5 heavy in the game, and all the others are premium vehicles. So say you don't have any of them and you want to see how it stacks up comparison to a T1 heavy. T1 heavy's got better frontal armor than a KV-1. It's got better frontal turret and better frontal hull, and it's better all-round frontal hull in terms of front. The 76mm gets better DPM, better reload time, worse aim time, but once you buff it, it'll probably go to the same. Better aim time, and with vert stabs, etc., that will go down. Plus, it gets 10 degrees of gun depression. Yeah. So that gets a better gun. But now we come to the real killer in terms of the KV-1. If the KV-1 is worse than any other heavy tank in pretty much every category, and you only want to play it for the gun because the gun has got better alpha damage than any other tier 5 heavy at this tier that's tech tree, except for one, which is the BDR. BDR gets better frontal hull, it gets the same turret. If you upgrade the turret, it goes to 140, it gets an even better frontal turret. It does of course have the big old weak spot, but again, that's typical BDR stuff, isn't it? So yeah, the BDR gets better armor than a KV-1. It also gets better mobility than a KV-1. It gets a better gun than a KV-1. It gets a 90mm DCA-30, which it's got worse aim time and accuracy, I'll give you that, but it gets better average pen with AP and APCR, better HE pen, far better average damage, and it gets the same gun depression. Honestly, the BDR is arguably a far better tank than a KV-1, and that's just it. The KV-1 is a tank that does everything alright and does other stuff worse, but people just don't talk about it because it's got sort of just like saw that KV-1 where people just sort of go, it's KV-1, what you gonna do? Honestly, it's not a great tank. Looking at the stats there, any other tank will outclass it in most categories, and all the other tanks have got something else going for them. For example, a Churchill 1, people don't like it because it's slow and the armour is but it gets the best gun for a tier 5 heavy in the game. The T14 is a tank that many people consider to be a decent heavy. It's got decent armour, it's got a gun which is alright, it's got good DPM for a gun, and if you're a heavy you're going to be frontlining anyway, so the accuracy doesn't really matter as much. KV-220T has got better frontal armour, and overall just the armour profile on this thing is just amazingly good, even if the gun isn't. But yeah, KV-220T is just generally a tank that people like playing. The T1 Heavy people play because of that frontal armour. T1 Heavy's got the frontal armour going for it. The BDR has got the alpha damage and the penetration going for it. If not the DPM, it's got the same sort of DPM as a KV-1, but in which case it's got the same accuracy and aim time, and it's got the same DPM, but it's just got better pen and damage than a KV-1 does, which means that the KV-1 gun is therefore obsolete in comparison to the French gun, when the French gun is mounted on a better tank. It's a pretty painful tank to play, if I'm honest. I hadn't played it that much until I did the gameplay for this, and then I realised just how bad the tank is. Honestly, it gave the Germans problems when it turned up in 1941, but here it's not 1941, it's 2020 in Modern Tanks Blitz. It's not the Eastern Front anymore, it's the Mixture Front, and in the Mixture Front it doesn't do very well at all. The only reason you'd really play this tank is for the derp gun, which is fair enough. A derp gun is decent, but if you want an actual effective battle tank, just go for something like a Churchill, a T1 Heavy, or a BDR. The KV-1 just doesn't have a place anymore, really. I don't think. It's just been left behind, and it's just not a tank that you should really be playing when there are better options available, either as a tech tree vehicle or as a premium vehicle. Which a Churchill 3 costs how much gold? Like, what was it? Like 2,500 gold for a Churchill 3, and a Churchill 3 is arguably a better tank than a KV-1. You got Matilda, Matilda 4, which is 2,300 gold, I think, and that's got better mobility than the KV-1, plus the same armour. 75 all round on the turrets, 75, 70, 55 on the hull. It's got better overall armour than a KV-1, and it's a tier 5 medium. And just one last thing before we move off of the KV-1. The Matilda. The Matilda at tier 4 has got 200 extra DPM, and it's got a far better rate of fire, and better accuracy and better aim time, and you can actually aim for weak spots and you can snap shots and it doesn't really matter, and it's just pretty much a big powerhouse. Other tanks of this tier, yeah, it's the DPM isn't as bad as the KV-1, but even so, DPM 913, it's a tier 4 medium, it's a tier 5 heavy. This thing's got 300 less DPM than a tier 5 heavy. And one more thing that I want to point out, the Panzer Jaeger, it's a tier 2 German tank destroyer, and it's got over half the DPM of a KV-1, and it's a tier 2 tank destroyer. It is a beast at tier 2, and it's a far better tank to play than a KV-1. And yeah, the DPM on this thing is crazy for the tier. The DPM on this thing is not. overall, just the KV-1 is not a particularly great tank anymore. Whether it was in the day, I can't remember, and I'm not too sure. Someone will have to look that up for me, but nowadays there are just better options on the market. As for consumables, standard repair, first aid, fire, you've got your engine power, you've got your adrenaline, you've got your multi-purpose. As for provisions, you've got your standard fuel for 3% engine power and turret traverse, which is a good idea. Gets that hull traverse up, most importantly, and the power to weight. Condensed milk, which 3% of crew mastery, again useful for getting that DPM up by 17, or amazing. And then you've got your protective kit, which is all that lot, which you can go ahead and mount up. You've got 55 rounds of ammo, which you're never going to fire in a game because you've got a 10-second reload time. You've got a 10-second reload time, near enough. So yeah, you're never going to fire off 55 rounds, even though 55 rounds isn't particularly a lot. It's enough for this tank, because yeah, you just don't have the DPM to fire off that many shots in a game, especially when you're up against tier 6s. Against tier 6, this thing definitely struggles. The penetration just isn't enough, and combine that with the terrible accuracy means that if you do pen, it's a gamble whether or not you hit in the first place. Even against things like Panzer 4s at range, you can easily just go wide and either miss or bounce off of a Panzer 4. Isn't that sad? As for equipment, gun rammer, definitely get that DPM up, reload time down. Gonna want that because otherwise it's a 10-second reload time. Calibrated shells is a nice idea, gets you up to 126 average pen, which is starting to get better. But for a 10-second reload time, probably a 10.5 second reload time to do 200 average damage if you were running calibrated shells, you'd go down to below 1200 DPM without a gun rammer. That's painful. Improved modules for the extra track durability, because your tracks are exposed. They do eat shots. So you're going to want that for the extra track durability, because the tracks are big and they do take shots, and that's very useful, especially with your low health pool. Coated optics, you are a heavy tank. In the end, you're definitely not a sniper with any of the guns you choose. Coated optics, I believe this thing actually had a 57mm at one time back in the day. I would probably run this thing with a 57mm if I had the option. This is the one time I would go for a lower caliber gun on a tank if I had the option, because the 85mm just isn't worth it. I believe this thing had a 57mm, so Wargaming, bring back the 57mm for the KV-1. Coated optics is what you're going to want to go for anyway. It takes it up from about 210 meters view range to 235, which is, again, it's a pretty blind tank as well. It doesn't have very good view range. Enhanced gun lane drive, definitely get that aim time down. Enhanced armor, I mean, might as well. Better hull, better turret armor, and you do get some slight extra buffs to the hull armor, so you might as well go with that. Engine accelerator for the extra power to weight and average speed and hull traverse, engine power, etc. All that, definitely go with that. Refined gun definitely takes it down from like 0.42 to 0.38. Without refined gun, this thing has got the same accuracy as a 122, a Russian 122 at tier 7/8. That's how bad this gun is in terms of accuracy. And then you've got your enhanced tracks and toolbox, your choice really of that and whatever the hell those two things are. So overall, I do not like the KV-1. If you couldn't tell, it's just not great. When there are better tanks that you could play, as much as people don't like the Churchill. The Churchill has at least got a very good gun, and you can actually get through tier 6s, and you can actually hit them in the first place. It doesn't quite have the alpha damage as the KV-1, but it's got the DPM, it's got the penetration, and the accuracy as well. Yeah, like I said, the gun on this thing is comparable to a Russian 122, but without the big alpha damage, and without the comparative DPM of a Russian 122. Yeah, this tank, unless you really like the KV-1, or you really want historical tanks like I do, yeah, there's not much point to be playing the KV-1, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to anyone who likes the KV-1, but it's just not that great anymore. I'm sorry to say. So yeah, I'll thank you for watching, and goodbye.